going on, guys? Nick here from Quack Rack. Today we're going to walk through the installation of one of our rear racks, our Elite Series rear rack for a CanAm Max HD8 or Max HD10 Defender. First and foremost, after unboxing, I want to go through all the components that you need to check off and make sure that you have. Rack system components. You're going to have a basket, a one-piece all-welded basket. You're going to have a driver side and a passenger side support leg. They will be labeled with a D and P label, and then the necessary hardware. So the hardware that you'll have, it'll consist of 8 set screws, 8 bolts, and 8 nuts. And for the CanAm locking system, 4 CanAm link cues, and then the required tools and where the hardware goes will be within this screen itself. After you guys have verified that you have all the necessary components to begin the installation, let's dive in. We'll have the guys come in and we will start to install the legs to the rack itself. So the first step you're gonna do is take your basket and let's lay it on its face right here. We recommend putting a piece of foam or cardboard underneath just to be easy on the powder coat itself. You will have, if you have the Elite Series, you will have all the wiring. It will come zip tied, so just clip your zip ties. You'll have your wiring for your downward facing bed lights and your recessed, if you have the Elite Series Pro rear rack, your recessed scene pods on both corners. So once the rack is flipped on its face, you'll take the legs that are notated by a P and a D, passenger, driver, and start to peel back your wire and put the leg into the rack. So once you've got your rack laid on its face, again, you'll grab the necessary legs, passenger, driver, and if you've got the Elite Series, the lights are gonna be pre-installed in this basket. So there's gonna be 2 sets of positive and grounds coming out. You're gonna have a set for your downward facing bed lights, your rock lights, and then on this Elite Series Pro rear rack, you'll have a set of wires that power both recessed lights. You're gonna take the wire for both sets of lights and run it through the passenger side leg itself. So through the top of the leg, and it'll come out a pre-drilled hole on the bottom of the leg. So we do send these racks, obviously with enough slack, enough wire to be able to run to a power source and a switch. So you'll just have to, either by yourself or with somebody else, pull the wire back. The leg is notched, so to ensure you don't pinch your wire, when installing the leg into the machine block itself, there's gonna be a notch in the leg that has passenger side, and your wire will run outside of the square tubing and run right through the notch. So when you press it down, you're not pinching any wire. And again, it's coming out the hole on the bottom of the leg. So after you've got your passenger side leg installed, again, it's as simple as taking the leg, and there's milled out machine blocks, taking the round tube and pressing it down in there. I do want to emphasize, make sure the legs are grounded out, and you'll be able to feel. You really want to give it a hard press, maybe take a rubber mallet and tap it in there. Your wire is coming out. Again, your wire is running through the frame, and it'll run through the leg with the notch. You'll repeat that exact same process, obviously not including the wire. On the driver's side, press the leg in, and now we're going to move on to step 3, which is going to be securing the legs into the machine block on the tray itself. So what you're going to do on that is you'll take your hardware pack that consists of 8 set screws. Each machine block, so each side corner of this rack where the leg goes into the rack itself has 2 threaded holes, so 8 total, 2 per machine block, 8 threaded holes all the way around. You'll take the 5/16 set screw and just screw them in on all sides, ensuring that the leg is tight. So you guys can see here, this leg still has some play in it, versus this leg is already secured down with 2 set screws per machine block, and it's in place. We don't recommend to tighten them, just hand tighten them at this particular point before we put it on the bed. A little bit of play might help because every bed is slightly different. So there's leaving a little bit of slack in there before you put your bed rail mounts on is probably recommended on this end. Okay, so after your legs are installed, hand tightened, all 8 set screws, you're gonna take the legs and the entire rack system and flip it back right side up so it rests on the leg and move it close to the machine. Next step, you and a buddy are gonna lift the rack, legs connected, and set it on the bed rail of the machine itself. So for you Elite Series owners, I want to point something out. When you and a buddy go to take the rack itself and set it on the bed rail of the machine itself, just be cautious with your wire. You are gonna have wire, again, running out the passenger side back leg. So when you set this angle, the bottom angle on the leg itself on the bed, just be cautious, make sure your wire is out of the way so you're not setting all the way to the rack onto the wire and pinching the wire. We like to take it and just find a natural opening in the bed. On this CanAm, there's a perfect slot, so we've designed it so the wire comes through this round tube and just comes out the bottom, and there's no chance for it to be pinched. So the next step is we're gonna move to the hardware pack. For the CanAms, we secure the rack system itself to the bed using a CanAm link cue and some provided hardware from QuackRack. You're gonna have 8 bolts and 8 lock nuts. First step is that Ryan's gonna show us right now is gonna be to take a CanAm link cue and attach it, bolt it to the tabs that are welded on to the bottom of the leg itself. So you'll take that link cue, you'll press it down in the diamond cutout on the CanAm bed rail itself. Press this link cue down, line it up with the holes that are on this tab on the bottom of the leg, run a bolt per side, and then tighten the nut up. So as you can see, we took the CanAm link cue, provided hardware, 2 bolts, 2 nuts per link cue cutout, and attached and secured the link cue to the tab on the bottom of our leg. Still leaving, and I want to point this out, still leaving this lever that tensions it wide open. That's going to be one of the last steps you do. So what we just saw Ryan do there, we're going to repeat on both sides, both driver and passenger, totaling to 4, and we'll move on to the next step. When attaching the link cues to the tabs on the bottom of our legs, from a tension standpoint, we want them snug, relatively snug, but when you hit your break point on it, when you're tightening it down, don't over force it. So once you have all 4 CanAm link cues attached and installed to the tabs on the bottom of our legs, it's time to actually tension the rack down. So there's a lever, a black lever on each link cue, and it's as simple as just taking it and flipping it over, and that tensions it down. If you ever have trouble, if there's too much tension, it's too tight to actually fold and break the lever over, there is a tension screw that's found on the top of the link cue. You just have to adjust that tension screw, and that'll adjust the tension of the lever itself. So for you Guide Series owners, no lights on your rack, no light system integrated into the rear rack itself. The installation of the product is now complete. Actually, one more thing I do want to cover. If you are Guide Series and you don't have to run any wires, and that is just do a 1-through on all 8 set screws. Make sure that once the rack is placed on the machine, secured down using the CanAm link cues and provided hardware, just do a quick run through on all 8 set screws. Make sure they're nice and tight, and your product is ready to be used. So for you Elite Series owners that have an integrated LED lighting system in your rear rack, now it's time to dive into the wiring piece of this installation. So again, the leg runs through the round tube, the wire runs through the round tube of the passenger side rear leg and comes out in the bed. As you can see Ryan right here, he's now taking both sets of wires, 1 set at a time, and feeding it on this CanAm, on this machine, through an OEM hole that's already in the bed. So there's gonna be, right where your leg lines up on the bed, you're gonna find a hole, a little opening that will drop the wire, as you can see, through the bed itself. And this is super important because we get a lot of questions on if we've got wires running through, like if we've got wires in the rack system, can we still use the dump bed function? And as long as you run it like this, with the wiring coming through the square tube, drop down through the leg itself, and then run it through the bed rail 100%. It affects nothing from a dump bed. So as you can see, he's feeding all the wire through, pulling the slack out. Something else, let's go back to that position. I do want to notate this. When you're running the wire through the bed rail hole, undo the levers and just rest pull the rack up and rest it so you have easy access to your wires. And then at the end, you'll see what Ryan does after he feeds all the wire through. He'll re-secure the link cue into the bed rail hole itself, tighten them up, and you're good to go. So once you've got your wires run through the bed, as you can see, the next step is going to be to dump the bed, just so you have some clearance and easy access to all your wires. We do recommend that you tape both sets of wires. So again, if you look right here what Ryan's doing, you've got a ground and a positive and another ground and a positive. So we do recommend on the Elite Series Pro with 2 different independent lighting systems that you just go ahead and tape the wires together just to make it a cleaner installation. And for you Elite Series owners that just have the downward facing bed light system, so 2 rock lights, and you don't have these cut corners that you'll find on the Elite Series Pro, obviously it's the same process, the same steps that you're going to be going through. It's just you're going to only have 1 set of wires, 1 ground, 1 positive. So now we've got the wire run through the bed. The wire's taped together. What do we do now? If you look under here, you're going to have OEM factory wiring, and that is how you're going to route your wire using zip ties, routing it from the back of the bed where the wire drops through up to start to make your run to the front and the power source of the machine itself. So before you start to route the wire up to the front, we do want to point something out that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to remove, that Ryan's going to do right now, you're going to have to remove the battery cover, and then you'll have to remove, if you've got a crew cab, the back seat and the front seat floor panel right here. And what that's going to do is open up easy and quick access to all your wiring from factory for you to route that wire from the bed all the way to the front. So after you have all your panels removed, all the wiring and the floorboard exposed, now it's time to start the process of routing the wire from the bed towards the front. So on these machines, be it Polaris, CanAm, Honda, Yamaha, whatever it may be, the easiest way to route this wiring so you don't have to find your own path is just find a pre-routed wire from OEM, from factory. So in this case, there's a pre-routed wire that's coming from the passenger side taillight, just the taillight wiring. We're going to actually use this to our advantage by taking this wire, hanging it in the hangers that are already found up underneath the bed, and then using zip ties to zip tie and route the wire all the way towards the front. So as you can see right here, he's just coming in. This is our wire that we just wrapped. This is factory wire, and he's just simply zip tying it to make sure everything stays high and tight, out of the way, no wire slack that could grab on something, hit a muffler and burn through. That is a key component that we do want to highlight, is make sure your wire is high and tight. You don't want a bunch of slack underneath here. When you're dumping the bed, it'll potentially, bind on something or get burnt on the muffler. So now it's time to route the wire into the cab itself. As you can see, we're just feeding it through the opening right on the left side of that battery. Pull all your slack through, and now you've got the wire entered into the cab. Again, your floor panels are removed because we're going to use that to route it all the way to the front. So now that you've got your wire pulled through into the cab, it's time to hook it up to power. So you're going to take 2 ring terminals, peel back your wiring, the jacketing on the wiring itself, and you'll attach your ring terminals, and then attach the ring terminals to the battery. So once you've got your wires connected, your ground and your positive, connect it and tighten down onto the battery. It's time to just spot check, make sure the lights work. So if your bed is still dumped, close the bed. On the Elite Series rear rack, it already comes with the pre-installed integrated rocker switch on the back. So come to the back, press it on, lights work, on, off, and you're good to go. We hope you enjoyed this installation video. With any other further questions, you can always reach out to one of the team members here at Quack Rack. So for you Elite Series Pro owners, now it's time to run the wire that powers the recessed seating pods. Generally speaking, this is very simple. You've got a ground and a positive. You've got to find a power source, route the wire all the way to the dash, and then wire it into a switch. From a switch wiring standpoint, we're going to include a document that goes into detail as to how to wire the switch itself. But from finding power, on this particular machine, you could tie your wires into the battery like we tied the downward facing bed lights into, or you can route that wire all the way up to the front. And on this CanAm, it's got 2 terminals behind the dash itself, so you just pop the dash out. You can connect your power and ground there and route it to the switch. Again, wiring to the switch itself. We'll have an enclosed document, and from there, reinstall everything, install the switch in the dash, reinstall the dash, put all your floor panels and battery cover back in, and you're good to go.